Skyrim is a world that feels alive. Cities are filled with people, roads are travelled, and even the most dangerous places usually have something or someone waiting for you. There's movement, noise, a constant sense that life is happening all around you. But not everywhere. Some places feel forgotten, some characters feel left behind, and the more time you spend in Skyrim, the more you start to notice them. The quiet corners of the map where nothing changes, and the NPCs who exist without connection, without purpose, or sometimes without anyone at all. They're not always important, they're not always part of major quests, but they leave an impression for a different reason. Because in a world this full, their silence stands out the most. You've probably passed it, nestled on the craggy slopes of the Reach, between the grandeur of Markarth and the misty borders of the northwest, sits a settlement that barely makes a sound. No guards patrol it, no grand quests revolve around it. Most players barely spend 5 minutes there, and yet it has a name, Whiterun. It sounds like it should matter, like it once mattered, but that it just doesn't anymore. This is the story of a town caught between ghosts and gold, a place with no Jarl, no glory, and no future. This place could possibly be the loneliest city in all of Skyrim. You don't stumble upon Whiterun with any fanfare. There's no radiant quest that pushes you towards it, no courier handing you a letter, no urgent rumour whispered in a tavern. You just arrive. 3 buildings, 2 smelters, some tired workers, and 2 mines that no one seems eager to enter. It doesn't look ruined, but it feels like it should be. The architecture is still intact, the land isn't cursed, and yet Whiterun gives off the quiet melancholy of a place that was forgotten while still being lived in. The trees feel like they're listening. The stones remember more than the people actually do. Skyrim is a land defined by borders, political, divine, cultural, and almost every major location fits neatly into a faction. Markarth belongs to the Silverbloods, Whiterun serves as the battleground for the Civil War, Winterhold clings to the College for relevance. But Whiterun, it's not really claimed by anyone. Technically, it is still part of the Reach, but it has no governance, no steward, no guards. It's a free town in a game that rarely allows places to exist without ownership. And that's its first danger, because when no one protects you, anyone can, and someone did. If you visit at the right time, you'll walk into the middle of a heated argument between the town's leader, Einethach, with 2 Silverblood mercenaries. They want control of the mine. They say it's always belonged to their family. Einethach insists otherwise. There's no resolution without you. You're the deciding factor, and no matter what you choose, whether you let the Silverbloods take over or drive them away, the game just moves on. The mercenaries leave, or they don't. Einethach thanks you, or he doesn't. But the mine keeps operating, the people keep working, and no one ever really speaks of it again. Even in victory, Whiterun remains voiceless. There are 2 mines in Whiterun. Both are small, both are basic, and yet both are worked by a handful of weary NPCs who seem like they haven't left in years. There's no hidden treasure, no buried artifact, just iron, silver, and exhaustion. What makes it unsettling isn't the danger, it's the mundanity of it all. Every miner here talks like someone halfway to giving up, just trying to make ends meet, hope the Silverbloods don't come back. You're not in a battlefield, you're in a holding pattern. Whiterun isn't dying, it's enduring, and that might just be worse than death. If this town were to have a heart, it's Einethach, a Reachman by blood, a Nord by survival. He owns the mines, oversees the town, and keeps the peace. But the game never lets him become more than that. He has no family, no political reach, no alliances. He's a good man in a bad position, trying to hold on to a settlement no one respects, in a region ruled by people who want him gone. Even if you help him, he fades back into his loop. He wakes, he walks, he worries. Like the town itself, Einethach is both vital and invisible. The Reach has always been a contested territory. The Forsworn attack from the hills, the Stormcloaks want Markarth, the Imperials want to hold it. And Karthwasten? Karthwasten just waits. It never gets attacked, no Forsworn raids, no Civil War battles, no dragons to send. You'd think that makes it peaceful, which it does, but doesn't at the same time. It makes it kind of empty, because the quiet here doesn't come from its safety, it comes from its irrelevance and its isolation. Skyrim's wars pass over Karthwasten not out of mercy, but out of indifference. Even the game forgets it exists, and that makes it even more lonely than it already is. Lore nerds know the name Karth shows up elsewhere: Karth Spire, Karth River, Old Roldan. The name has history, and in older Elder Scrolls lore, Karthwasten was once a thriving trading post, a site of importance. That's not really what we see in Skyrim, however. We see the remnants, the dust, the outline of what it might have once been. There are no ruins, but there are echoes. There are only 3 buildings. The way the mine's positioned, the absence of a central building. It feels like a city that once had a spine, and now it's just kind of a ribcage. And the game never says why. It just leaves you here to feel it. Most towns in Skyrim have a shrine, or at least an altar, a symbol of belief, a thread to the divine. But not in this town. Despite its long-standing name, despite its proximity to the ancient Reachman traditions, despite the weight of myth and blood in its soil, there are no gods here. No Talos, no Kine. Just rocks, wind, and people too tired to ask for help from anyone, mortal or divine. It's spiritual silence, and in a game that's built on so many prophecies, that kind of silence is deafening. More importantly, even though Karthwasten is a small town, there's a child, a daughter. She has no dialogue, no schedule, no story. Well, because she's not there. She was kidnapped by the Forsworn with her parents longing over her return. And that might just be the most tragic thing of all about Karthwasten. Because every other child in Skyrim either dreams of something greater or fears something worse. If you look at any other child playing in Solitude, or in Dawnstar, or in Riften, they're having fun. They're running around and they don't worry about anything. But this girl, well, she's gone. She doesn't know there's anything else, and no one teaches her otherwise. Even though Karthwasten does appear on your map, it doesn't lead you anywhere. There's no radiant bounty here. No courier will send you back. You won't be told to find a lost artifact in its mine, and no companion will say, let's stop in Karthwasten. It's a name on a map that means literally nothing after you click it. Yes, there are a few quests that do bode as some excitement, but however, the isolation of it all makes it different from every other major settlement. Because at least when you forget Roekstead, the game still reminds you. However, Karthwasten never calls you back, not even to say goodbye. But the pieces are all there. A Reachman leader caught between cultures, a town without allegiance, a mine at the centre of a power struggle, a child with no voice, and a legacy erased. It could have been a Forsworn stronghold, or a hub for rebel miners, or a haven for those caught between the war. But it's none of those. It's a village that the narrative drives past, a branch in the road that no one chooses, and that's what makes it so powerful. Because Skyrim is a world of chosen ones, and Karthwasten reminds you of the people that were left behind. Karthwasten isn't abandoned, but it might as well be. It breathes, it functions, it exists, but it doesn't live. And in a game where most towns scream for attention, through quests, through music, through blood, Karthwasten just sits in the hills and waits for someone to remember it, for something to happen, and for the silence to break. But it never does. And that, more than any monster or mystery, is what lingers. Because sometimes the scariest thing in a fantasy world is the town that the story forgets. In Skyrim, everyone has a job. Merchants sell things, guards say things, and Jarls sit on chairs and argue about things. Even Fandul in Riverwood has a job. He walks back and forth between a stump and a woodpile, chopping firewood forever, as if his AI brain is powered by splinters. But the point is, they all matter. If you pop open the console, click on an NPC and peek behind the curtain, you'll see it. Faction tags, daily routines, AI packages, dialogue trees. Every NPC is plugged into the machine. They're little gears in a very large, very buggy medieval clock. Every NPC except one. She doesn't talk much, she doesn't sell anything. She has no family, no town, no meaningful connection to any questline. She doesn't even have a real name, just a first name, one word. But she's always there, in every playthrough, in the exact same place, waiting. South of Falkreath, past the Black Lake and through a chokehold of pines, you'll find her. You have to want to get there. There's no main road, no quest marker. Just wander far enough into the mountains and the trees start crowding in. The music cuts out, snow starts to fall. You see wolves instead of bandits. You pass into that kind of quiet only Skyrim can do. The kind that feels like the rest of the game has forgotten to follow you. And then you see the cabin. It's not haunted, not on fire, not swarming with cultists or vampires or necromancers with names like Zaril the Blackened. It's just a cabin. A little wooden bridge over a stream, some practice dummies. It's all very peaceful. And outside the cabin, bow on her back, calm expression on her face, is her, Angie. She says hello. You say hello back. And then she just exists. At first glance, Angie seems straightforward. She offers to teach you how to shoot a bow. It's simple. Hit the targets, get some free arrows, earn a few skill points. She even tells you a little bit about herself. Her parents were killed by the Thalmor. She came out here to live alone, and she wants to be left in peace. It's a neat little detour, a side activity like mining ore or finding a weird bug in a jar. But once you finish her archery training, that's it. No follow-up quest, no new dialogue. She doesn't become a new follower. You can't marry her, you can't send her to one of your Hearthfire homes to be your personal archer in residence. She doesn't even acknowledge you after that. You train with her, she says thanks, and then she just goes back to standing, like nothing happened at all. Skyrim is full of self-contained characters. Froki living in a cave with his grandson, the ghost of old Rolden Inn, the skeleton sitting at a dinner table on top of a mountain for no reason at all. But even these oddballs usually tie into something else. A quest, a Daedric artifact, a Radiant event, a weird joke. Angie doesn't. She's not part of any faction. No one mentions her. She never leaves her cabin. She has no enemies, no allies, no story arc. She's a rock in the stream. The water just flows around her. Which begs the question, why is she here at all? If you dig into the creation kit, the dusty attic of Bethesda's imagination, you start to find traces. Angie's cabin is flagged as a player safe house, which is rare. The tag means you can sleep there, store items, live there, and the game won't eventually reset or eat your loot. But Skyrim never tells you this. There's no note on the table, no mention in dialogue, no fast travel icon. Bethesda created a whole safe house and then didn't put up a welcome mat. It's like they built the skeleton of something bigger and then just stopped. Maybe she was supposed to be a follower. Maybe she had a role in a cut questline about Thalmor or the Civil War. There's a line in her dialogue about fearing she'll be hunted, but the threat never comes. No one is looking for her, and no one even knows she's there. Bethesda laid down the bricks, then they went to lunch and never came back. Naturally, the community did what it always does when Bethesda leaves a thread hanging. They started knitting sweaters out of it. Some people think Angie was part of a lost faction, maybe a surviving blade or an offshoot of the Dark Brotherhood. Her archery skills, her isolation, the whole mysterious woman in the woods vibe, it kind of just fits. Others say that she was part of a scrapped mentor system. You'd find NPCs who trained you over time, like Aethys with one-handed. But maybe the system was buggy or half-finished, and Angie is just the last remnant. And then there's my favourite theory. Angie is a ghost. Think about it. She never eats, she never sleeps, she never leaves her property. She speaks in soft, static lines that never change. If you kill her, and you can, there's no bounty. No one reacts. It's like the game doesn't acknowledge her existence at all. Like she's already dead, just lingering. In Skyrim, we're trained to evaluate NPCs like vending machines. Can I marry them? Can they follow me? Do they give me loot, XP, a quest? Angie doesn't do any of that. She gives you a few arrows and some advice, and then she's done. Which is probably why most players forget about her. She's not marked, she's not repeated, she's not important. But maybe there's a point. Maybe she exists precisely because she doesn't do anything. Because in a world that's constantly handing you objectives, Angie is just present. No monster to slay, no dialogue wheel to grind through, no skill tree to max out. She's a human moment in the game of godhood. And that might just be the rarest thing in all of Skyrim. Angie is lonely, but not in the dramatic violin swell kind of way. Skyrim doesn't really do that. Her loneliness is quieter than that. It's in the silence after she stops talking. It's in the second bed that no one sleeps in. It's in the way she just stands there, all day, not doing much of anything. Not waiting, not watching, just existing in a space that no one else ever bothers to visit. And it's not the sad kind of lonely either. Well, not exactly. It's just the absence of things. Of movement, of conversation, of purpose. Skyrim is full of NPCs with routines and routes and radiant quests that make them feel alive. Angie has none of that. She's not part of the story, she's the pause between stories, the breath you take before fast travelling somewhere louder. And once you notice it, once you feel that quiet hanging around her, it sticks with you. We all know loneliness is baked into Skyrim. You're the Dragonborn, the Chosen One. You're everywhere and nowhere at once, saving towns, toppling kings, talking to gods. And yet somehow you're always a little bit apart. You're not from here, you're through here. And every now and then you meet someone who feels the same. Angie is one of them. She doesn't want to help, she doesn't want glory. She's not waiting for a hero to solve her problems. She just wants to be left alone. You can join her for a while, sleep in the spare bed, sit by the fire, practice your aim. But eventually you'll leave, and she'll still be there, in the same spot watching the snowfall. Or maybe not watching at all, maybe she's just existing. Skyrim is a loud game. Dragons, dungeons, shouting people off cliffs. But every once in a while, it whispers. And sometimes it whispers in the form of a woman in the woods who wants nothing from you, gives you nothing grand and leaves you with nothing but a question. Maybe Angie doesn't do anything. Maybe she just is. And maybe in a world built on utility, that's the most remarkable thing of all. In a game like Skyrim, it's easy to overlook the quiet people. The world is filled with shouting Nords, storming battle mages, and ancient dragons clawing their way out of time. Cities burn, Jarls scheme, and you, the player, are usually at the centre of it all. But if you ever stop sprinting from one quest marker to the next, if you wander off the beaten path, sometimes the world lets you find something else. Something forgotten. And something small. Not magical, not dangerous, just quiet and strange. If you walk through the mountains, you will come across him, in his little shack, isolated in the hills. And that's what might make him the loneliest NPC in all of Skyrim. Froki's shack is exactly what it sounds like. A tiny wooden structure half collapsed and huddled against the cliffs in the southern mountains of Skyrim. It isn't near a road, it isn't near a town. It isn't even on the way to anything, really. There's no marker, no reason to come here. Just stone, snow, and silence. If you do find it, it's probably by accident. Maybe you were scaling the cliffs looking for the Shrine of Talos. Maybe you were chasing a fox through the trees. Maybe, like me, you were just bored of fast travelling and wanted to see what lived in the margins of the map. And then you see it. A shack, a fire, some smoke. A sign that someone actually still lives up here. Froki is an old Nord, grey-haired, worn. He greets you with suspicion, like someone who stopped trusting visitors a long time ago. He wears simple clothes, no armour, no rings. He's not a quest giver in the traditional sense. He doesn't beg for help or praise your accomplishments. He just sits near the fire watching the wind cut through the trees. But if you talk to him, if you really stay for a while, you'll learn that Froki used to be something more. A hunter, a soldier, a worshipper of the old gods. A man who once fought for Skyrim, but who gave up on it a long time ago. He's one of the only living followers of Kine, the ancient goddess of the storm and sky, and he teaches her ways to his grandson, Hamming. But that's right, Froki isn't entirely alone, is he? But it still feels like he is. If you've ever played Skyrim from the start, Hamming might sound familiar. He's one of the first NPCs you ever meet, a child from Helgen who survives the dragon attack at the beginning of the game. You see him escape with his father as the town crumbles. And then nothing. His father disappears, his home is gone, and Hamming is never really mentioned again. Unless, of course, you find this shack. Because this is where he ended up, living with his grandfather in the middle of nowhere. No books, no toys, no friends, just a half-burnt shack, some hunting lessons, and the howling wind. Skyrim doesn't tell you what happened to his father. The game doesn't really care. And maybe that's what makes it worse, because it's not just Froki who's lonely, it's the boy too. Two forgotten characters stitched together by absence. And maybe that's why Froki always seems so angry. Froki doesn't like you. Not at first, anyway. He doesn't trust the companions, he doesn't believe in the 9 divines, and he especially doesn't believe in the Empire. To Froki, Skyrim lost its way when it forgot about the old gods, when it traded the wildness of Kine for the bureaucracy of the divines. He sees the modern world as weak, corrupt, disconnected from the land. He speaks in quiet, judgmental tones, not bitter, exactly, just disappointed. It's easy to write him off as another cranky old Nord, but if you listen closely, Froki's anger is grief. He's mourning a Skyrim that no longer exists, a time when men lived in the mountains, prayed to the sky, and didn't need thrones or temples to find meaning. That world is gone, and so Froki left the world with it. Or maybe the world left him. If you earn Froki's respect, usually by showing interest in Kine, he gives you a quest, but not a normal one. No kill this bandit or fetch this artifact. Instead, he tells you to visit Kine's sacred shrines and hunt the guardian spirits that dwell there. It's a simple task. Go to another remote hill, fight a ghost animal, and then return. But the journey takes you across the wildest parts of Skyrim. Deep forests, hidden cliffs, forgotten glades. And every time you fight one of Kine's guardians, you realise something. These aren't really evil spirits. They're not threats. They're sacred. They're symbols of the natural world, proud, powerful, and ancient. You're not killing monsters. You're proving that you understand them. And when you return to Froki, he doesn't cheer. He just nods. Like you've finally learned something he's known for decades. Talking about Froki's home, it isn't cozy. The walls are crooked, the floor is cracked, there's no food on the table, no clutter, no warmth. There are almost no visitors except for myself and other players. No signs of trade, no books, no notes, no letters. Froki doesn't even have 2 beds, one for him and one for his grandson. So I'm assuming they sleep in the one bed. But maybe Froki's shack wasn't meant to last. Maybe it was meant to be temporary, a place of exile, or pilgrimage, or mourning. But years passed, and the world didn't ask for him to return. So he didn't. That's the question that lingers, long after you leave. Did Froki really choose this? Did he walk away from civilization because he believed in something greater? A forgotten god? A purer way of life? Or did he lose everything and build his life out of the ruins? We'll never really know, will we? Skyrim doesn't really give us any answer to this. Froki doesn't have a good backstory quest or a personal journal or a friend who speaks about him in town. He is utterly and completely disconnected from the rest of the game. And in a world where everything is usually tied together, from Daedric cults to court intrigues, that kind of disconnection is rare, because it almost feels real. People like Froki exist. People who lose faith in the world, who retreat, who vanish into the hills, not because they hate people, but because they've been hurt by them too many times. Froki's not a villain. He's not even a hermit. He's just tired. Froki doesn't die in a grand battle. He doesn't leave behind a powerful weapon or a buried secret. When the game ends, he's still there. Still sitting by the fire, still raising a boy who lost his home. Still praying to a god no one remembers. And maybe that's what makes him the loneliest NPC in Skyrim. Not because he's alone, but because he's untouched and unclaimed by any major questline, any war, and any epic conclusion. He exists entirely outside the game's design, which means Froki isn't really here for the player. He's here for himself. Froki's shack isn't a dungeon. It's not a shrine. It's not even marked on most maps. It's just a shack, a house, in the mountains, slowly decaying under the snow. But it holds something that most places in Skyrim don't. Stillness. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of grief, of memory and of choice. Because Froki isn't a forgotten character. He's a character who chose to forget the world. And somehow, that's kind of more haunting. The wind never stops blowing around his home, the fire never quite warms the room, and the boy, Hamming, never says much of anything. But they're there, together, waiting for something that probably won't come. Maybe kind, maybe peace, maybe nothing. And as you leave Froki's shack and the snow begins to swallow the roof behind you, you might realise you weren't really meant to find him. But now that you have, you won't forget him. In a game like Skyrim, it's easy to overlook the quiet places. You're usually too busy slaying dragons, shouting enemies off cliffs, or watching entire cities crumble under civil war. But sometimes, if you stop rushing from quest marker to quest marker, you'll find something different. Not dangerous, not magical, just different. It's an inn, a simple wooden inn, like dozens of others scattered across Skyrim, but this one is different, because so few come here. No one needs it, and yet it's still here, waiting. This is Nightgate Inn, and it might just be the loneliest place in all of Skyrim. Nightgate Inn is located in the snowy nowhere between Windhelm and Dawnstar. It's not near a city, it's not even near a road. It sits awkwardly in the wilderness, tucked between snowbanks and crumbling trees, like someone plopped it into the world and forgot to connect it to anything. You won't find any guards here, no shopkeepers, no children running around, just the wind, the snow, and a single man behind the counter. His name is Hadring. He runs the place, though it's never quite clear why. Let's talk about what makes this place so strange. First of all, I would like to point out that the inn, while it's out of the way from a lot of the Skyrim world, it did help me in some ways as I was making the perilous journey from Whiterun to Winterhold, for no apparent reason other than the fact that I was bored and didn't want to fast travel like everyone else. The inn made for a great resting stop as a blizzard started to kick up and my horse began to believe it was a bad idea to keep going. But anyway, in Skyrim, inns serve a purpose. In Whiterun, the Banned Mare is filled with locals, mercenaries, and travellers. In Riften, the Bee and Barb is packed with shady characters and drunks. They are social spaces, alive with conflict, conversation, and narrative potential. But Nightgate Inn? Nightgate Inn is silent. When you enter, there's no music. Just the low hum of a fire pit and the occasional cough from the man behind the bar. Sometimes a few NPCs will be there. The orc who basically just stays in the cellar every day, and Full Theme, an old man who basically also lives there as well, even though he complains about it 24/7. This place does feel like a hiding spot. like it wasn't made for comfort. Comparing this to Whiterun's Inn, the Bennett Mare, in which you walk in and are immediately greeted by a man drumming or playing the flute, and more than one person sitting down. Nightgate Inn just seems like one of those ghost towns you'd find in the middle of the American desert. The main room of the inn gives off a vibe that it hasn't seen more than 20 people in the last few years, and that's what gives it such an odd vibe. This is where it gets weirder. There is no town around Nightgate Inn, no village, no associated mine, no travellers. It's not near a trade route, there's nothing to support it, and to be honest, the only reason I found it was because I was making the journey from Whiterun to Winterhold through the mountains. Most inns in Skyrim are placed where they make sense. Riverwood has one because it's a lumber town, Ivarstead has one because it's at the foot of the 7,000 steps. But Nightgate, it's the middle of nothing, which raises the question, why does this building actually exist? And who was it really meant to serve? But we don't really get an answer, not in the game, not in the dialogue, and not in the lore. You could argue that it's for hunters or passerbys, but even that feels like a stretch. There are almost no random encounters nearby, no patrols, no carriages, no foot traffic. However, there's the odd chance that you do end up passing by a trio of people travelling to another town through the mountains. But you have to go out of your way to find this place. And when you do, it feels like you weren't supposed to be here at all. Like the world forgot to erase it. Let's talk about Hadring. He's the innkeeper. He has a little family who he talks about in his dialogue. He mostly only talks about how the inn was built by his great-grandad. No backstory and no apparent life outside of this single room. He's voiced by a generic Nord voice actor and says a few polite lines, but nothing more than what's prompted. And yet, he's always here, always behind the counter, as if he's waiting for something. He doesn't comment on dragons, or the war, or the death of the Emperor. Even though the world is collapsing, he just says, "Let me know if you need anything." And somehow, that's worse. It's one thing for a place to be somewhat abandoned. It's another for it to pretend it's still functioning, even when it clearly isn't. Nightgate Inn isn't just empty. It's worse than that. It's hollow. Here's the thing. Skyrim is a massive world. It's full of detailed cities, scripted quest hubs, branching dialogues. But there are also fragments, leftover corners, unexplored ideas, half-buried concepts that never really got finished. And Nightgate Inn might be one of them. It could have been meant for something bigger, a town that never got built, a quest line that was cut, a hub that lost its context. But instead of deleting it, Bethesda left it in, fully furnished, lightly populated, and completely detached from everything else. It's like finding a chair in an empty warehouse. You sit in it, but you can't shake the feeling that you weren't meant to. But most importantly, the Nightgate Inn probably just acts as a rest stop for any traveller who dares to go through the mountains. And that makes it one of the most remarkable places in Skyrim. A place that was built to house people, but houses almost no one. But who was Hadring before all this? There's no quest about Hadring and no journal. But this absence invites questions. Who is this man really? And why did he choose this place? We know that his great-grandad founded this inn. But given no one ever comes here, except for the Orc and Fultheme, why would he stay? Hadring could have run an inn in any major hold. Inns are always needed in cities like Solitude or Riften. Instead, he chose to live alone in a snow-blanketed ruin of a road, serving close to no one. Even bandits don't wander in. That's not bad business, that's intentional isolation. Maybe this place wasn't always empty. Maybe there was once a nearby lumber camp or a mountain pass that got buried. Maybe Hadring stayed behind when everyone else left. Or maybe he was sent here in exile, a punishment disguised as hospitality. He never complains, he never asks for help, he just waits, every day and every hour. Waiting for customers who never come, selling food no one eats, making beds no one sleeps in. And maybe, just maybe, he prefers it that way. Nightgate Inn might not be haunted by ghosts, but Hadring himself feels like one. A remnant of a forgotten purpose, a man who chose silence when the world had too much noise. What's truly eerie about Nightgate Inn is that you, the player, are often its first real visitor in years. When you walk in, nothing special happens. There's no cutscene, no quest marker. Just the quiet acknowledgement that you've stumbled into a place that rarely sees visitors. And that's where the discomfort begins. Because Skyrim is a game of recognition. Walk into Whiterun and people know your name. Bards sing about your exploits, enemies run from your shouts, but at Nightgate Inn, no one knows you. No one even seems to care that you're there. It's like the world pauses, or maybe forgets you exist while you're inside. This makes Nightgate one of the few places in the game where your power means absolutely nothing. You could be the Dragonborn, or the listener of the Brotherhood, and Hadring still just shrugs and offers you a bed. And maybe that's why this place feels so lonely. Not because who's in it, but because of what it strips away from you. The attention, the purpose, the noise. For a few minutes, you're not a hero or a killer. You're just another quiet guest in a place that's trying to forget. Nightgate Inn isn't haunted. It isn't magical. There's no big twist, no boss fight, no secret treasure. It's just lonely. A perfectly good building, fully staffed with food, drinks, and beds. And no one to use it. A place made for community that has none. A space meant for warmth that now just holds air. And maybe that's the point. Because not everything in Skyrim has to be dramatic or epic or game-changing. Sometimes the emptiest places are the ones that speak the loudest. Skyrim is filled with people. Hundreds of them. Farmers, guards, innkeepers, mages, bandits, children who yell at you like you stole their lunch money. Each one of them exists for a reason. Or at least they try to. Some give you quests, some sell you potions, some dramatically die in front of you to prove that this dungeon means business. And then there's Snorid, a man so unremarkable, so untouched by questlines, so entirely devoid of purpose, that he accidentally becomes one of the most fascinating NPCs in the game. Snorid doesn't roam the roads of Skyrim. He doesn't stand out in the wilderness, waiting for players to stumble across him like some forgotten side character in a B plot that never got written. He lives in solitude. More specifically, he sleeps in the East Empire Company warehouse, a restricted access zone you're not supposed to enter unless you're on official business, which you probably aren't. And that's fitting, because Snorid doesn't want to be seen. You'll find him curled up on a bedroll, tucked away among crates and clutter. He doesn't patrol, he doesn't eat, doesn't work, he just sleeps. And sleeps, and sleeps. Like a man trying to speedrun through life with the fast travel button permanently held down. The only time he ever gets up is if he's attacked, at which point he'll fight back, briefly, then return to unconsciousness, metaphorically and probably literally. And if you do try to talk to him, he gives you the warm, friendly greeting of,
"You're not supposed to be in here."
That's it? That's the extent of Snorid's engagement with the world. Here's the thing. Almost every other NPC in Skyrim is part of a machine. A radiant system, a faction quest, a city's ecosystem. They fit in the game's design like gears in a clock. Snorid is like a marble in a blender. He doesn't move, he doesn't connect to the world in any real way. If you removed him from the game, I bet 99.9% of players would never even notice. He's not a character, he's the absence of one, which is weirdly bold when you think about it. In a game about shouting dragons out of the sky and becoming the champion of 16 different gods, Snorid is just trying to get through the day. He's like an anti-hero, but not in the edgy, morally grey way. More like an anti-entity, if that makes any sense at all. He defies narrative, and maybe, just maybe, that's the narrative Bethesda were going for. Okay, so maybe he's just a dock worker, right? He's in a warehouse, maybe he's off shift. Nope. Snorid has no job routines at all. No AI packages for hauling crates or clocking in at the East Empire Company. He's not listed in the employee registry in any meaningful way beyond existing. You don't see him hauling anything. He never interacts with anyone. There are NPCs in the warehouse who do go about their business. Snorid is not one of them. He has a job title, technically. Technically, he's a Nord employee, but that's about it. He is, in the most literal sense, an employee who has never worked a day in his life. He has no dialogue trees, no duties, no story hooks, no ambitions. Snorid is not a participant in Skyrim's economy. He is a bystander in its sleep cycle. But again, he has a name, and in Skyrim, a name actually means something. Right? Let's do a lore check. Open the wikis, comb through the UESP, look at game files, try to find a journal, a letter, a passing reference in someone else's quest. Anything to tell us about Snorid. Well, if you happen to do that, you won't find anything at all. There's no backstory, no implication of a backstory, no hints that a backstory might have once been drafted and then deleted. Snorid exists without context. He's not mentioned by any other NPC, he doesn't write, doesn't speak, doesn't appear to age, he just is. In a city filled with corruption, military tension, and royal politics, Snorid is none of it. He is the most background character imaginable, which somehow makes him stand out even more. Let's give Bethesda some credit. What if Snorid is deliberate? What if he's meant to represent something? A developer joke? An artistic metaphor? A weird social experiment to see how many people would sneak into a restricted area and find a man taking a decades-long nap? There's something almost performance art about it. You have hundreds of characters fighting and yelling and dying to give the game its drama and texture, and then one guy who's just sleeping on the job. He doesn't need your help, he doesn't want your attention, he doesn't want to be awake. He is the silent witness to a world in motion. Skyrim is tearing itself apart, literally, and Snorid's just hoping it'll quiet down before his next REM cycle. Honestly, he might be the smartest one in the whole province. Here's what's wild. Despite doing nothing at all, Snorid has a small but devoted fan base. You'll find posts about him on forums. Who is this guy in the warehouse? Why is there a Nord just sleeping in solitude? What's the whole point of Snorid? Some players even roleplay explanations for him. He's a smuggler in hiding, he's cursed to sleep forever, he's the last honest worker in the East Empire Company. Snorid is a canvas, a void you can probably project meaning onto. Because that's the thing. In a game where everything is designed to pull your attention, a character who asks for none of it becomes oddly magnetic. He's not trying to impress you, he's just here, like a box or a barrel or a goat that wandered indoors and nobody wants to deal with. Snorid is part of the world, not part of your story. And that is what makes him unforgettable. Let's zoom out. Snorid is, in many ways, a weird commentary on NPCs themselves. What does it mean to be a character in a world built entirely around the player? If every other NPC exists for you, to teach you something, to fight you, to quest with you, then Snorid's refusal to participate is almost revolutionary. He's not broken, he's resistant. He's the first NPC who's looked at the player, shrugged and said, "Nah, I'm good." Maybe he knows he's in the game, maybe he's achieved a higher level of awareness. He's the NPC who realised the futility of it all. While others chase glory, fame, dragon-slaying titles, and enchanted swords, Snorid has reached enlightenment. He is free. Or, maybe someone just forgot to delete him during development, but let me dream, I don't know. Let's be honest, not all of us are the Dragonborn. Most of us are, Snorid. We stay in bed longer than we should, we try not to attract attention, we have no grand quest. You don't shout people off mountains or become head of the East Empire Company in a week. We just exist, watching things happen around us, occasionally wondering if you're supposed to do something else, rather than watch a video about a Skyrim NPC who does nothing at all. Snorid is the mirror we rarely want to look into. He's what happens when a game built on power fantasies leaves a crack open for ordinary silence. And somehow, The silence is louder than any dragon shout. He doesn't fight the world, he endures it, quietly and alone. Maybe that's depressing, but maybe it's really not. Maybe it's a kind of comfort, because if Snorrid can find peace in just sleeping in a drafty warehouse, maybe we all can as well. Snorrid is an NPC who does nothing. Not metaphorically, not hyperbolically, literally nothing. No quests, no fights, no purpose, and no arc. And yet, he stays in your mind. Because in a world full of distractions, Snorrid offers stillness. In a province that demands your attention, he gives you nothing to look at. And somehow that makes you stare even harder. In a game that begs you to be the hero, Snorrid is a man who never asks you to be anything. And maybe he was a mistake, a leftover asset, an unsigned dialogue tree that wandered into the warehouse and never left. Or maybe, just maybe, he's Skyrim's quietest masterpiece. The only NPC in all of Skyrim that does nothing. And somehow that means, quite literally, everything. Skyrim is a land filled with noise. The clash of steel, the roars of dragons, and the ceaseless murmur of its people trying to survive in a frozen land. But far beyond that noise, beyond the cities and roads and reach of Jarls, there are places where silence reigns completely. One such place is Cliffside Retreat, a small cabin perched on a cliff southwest of Solitude, seemingly forgotten by both gods and men. It is one of the few locations in Skyrim that still feels alive, and yet utterly untouched. Inside lives a single woman, a nameless Nord hunter, alone but unbroken. She has no quest to offer, no dialogue of importance, no grand role in the fate of Skyrim. She simply exists, breathing quietly in the still air, tending to her craft and surviving one day at a time. Cliffside Retreat and its lone inhabitant together embody the forgotten edges of Skyrim. Not the ruins of the past or the victims of tragedy, but the living solitude of those who have chosen a quieter life, far from the chaos of the world. Cliffside Retreat is exactly what its name suggests, a retreat from everything. It stands high in the rocky wilds of Harfinger, its small chimney puffing faint smoke into the cold mountain air. To reach it, one must navigate a narrow, twisting path surrounded by wolves and bears, with no signposts or civilization to guide the way. The cabin itself is humble, a single room with a cooking pot, a bed and a few animal pelts, and the faint smell of smoke and pine. It's the kind of place easy to overlook, yet impossible to forget once found. The woman who lives here is often outside when you arrive, bow in hand, scanning the horizon for game. She greets no one, she neither attacks nor welcomes you. She simply exists, a reminder that not everyone in Skyrim seeks adventure or glory. Some seek only peace, however fragile. The Hunter of Cliffside Retreat has no name in the game's records. She is simply Hunter, a woman of few words and fewer needs. She hunts for food, crafts from the land, and lives off whatever she can gather from the wilderness. She is not aligned with any faction, not tied to any quest. She is one of Skyrim's rarest types of NPCs, a person who exists without reason in terms of the game's structure, but with great reason in the world's logic. She is the embodiment of Skyrim's quiet resilience. Many players overlook her entirely, others find her and assume she has a quest, a story, a hidden dialogue option, but there is none. When you speak to her, she offers the same brief, functional words as any hunter in the wild. And then, when you leave, she returns to her solitude, unbothered, unchanged. That makes her presence hauntingly beautiful. In a land obsessed with prophecy, her existence is purely human. She is not meant to change the world. She's simply trying to live in it. It's easy to mistake isolation for tragedy, but in Cliffside Retreat, the silence feels intentional. Unlike other remote NPCs who have been stranded or cursed, this hunter seems at peace with her seclusion. Her cabin is neat, her tools well kept, her life orderly. The sense is not of exile, but of choice. She chose to leave behind the bustle of the cities, the danger of politics, and the noise of other people. There is dignity in that choice. While most of Skyrim's people cling to the protection of walls and guards, she stands alone in the wild, surviving without need for anyone. It's a life that is difficult, dangerous, and yet deeply authentic, the purest reflection of Skyrim's harsh beauty. In a world where dragons scorch towns and war tears apart families, perhaps solitude is the only sane response. Harfinger is one of Skyrim's most rugged regions. Its cliffs drop into misty valleys. Its forests echo with the calls of predators. The air is sharp, the light is thin, and the sound of the sea below constant. Cliffside Retreat sits right in the midst of this harsh beauty. From her porch, the hunter can see miles of wilderness, jagged peaks, rolling fog, and the faint glimmer of solitude far in the distance. But that city may as well be another world. The isolation here is physical and spiritual. It's not just that few visit, it's that few could. The path to her home is treacherous and unmarked, guarded by wolves and trolls. It's not designed for travellers, it's designed to keep them out. And so the hunter remains apart, existing in the narrow space between civilization and oblivion, where one misstep could send her tumbling into the rocks below. And yet she endures for all this time. In most of Skyrim, every NPC exists for a reason, a quest, a piece of lore, a task. But the Hunter of Cliffside Retreat has no such function. You can sell items to her or give information, but that's about it. She's not part of any questline or hidden narrative. And that is precisely what makes her remarkable. She represents the parts of the world that don't revolve around the player. The places and people that exist simply because the world would feel emptier without them. Her life, in a sense, gives Skyrim its soul. Without characters like her, nameless, quiet, and living entirely apart from the drama of dragons and politics, the world would feel staged. But because she exists, the illusion of a breathing world becomes real. She hunts, eats, sleeps, and survives. Not for you, not for a quest, but because that's what she does. That is her purpose, even if the game doesn't call it one. Despite her apparent contentment, there's an undeniable melancholy in her life. Skyrim's wilderness is not a kind place. The nights are long, the predators relentless, and the winters cruel. When you stand inside her cabin and hear the wind battering against the walls, it's hard not to imagine what those nights must be like. The loneliness, the fear, the unending silence. A single sound outside could mean a deer or a saber cat. Every decision becomes a matter of survival. And yet she stays. That resilience, quiet, uncelebrated, and entirely human, is what makes her one of Skyrim's most powerful characters. She doesn't slay dragons, but she defeats the cold every morning. She doesn't shout through them, but she endures storms. Her story isn't told through quests, but through a continued existence in a world designed to crush the weak. There is, however, a strange peace in her isolation. In a land constantly torn apart by war and prophecy, she has escaped it all. She owes allegiance to no Jarl. She pays no taxes. No soldiers march past her door. The troubles of the world end at her cliff's edge. In that sense, she is freer than any other person in Skyrim. Her solitude is not punishment, it is liberation. She lives in balance with the land, untouched by the greed and violence that define so much of the province. Perhaps she knows something the rest of Skyrim does not. That to live quietly is sometimes the greatest rebellion of all. It's easy to imagine a future where the Dragonborn turns Cliffside Retreat into something more. Not a fort or a settlement, but a home. The cabin's location makes it perfect for peace, overlooking breathtaking vistas, shielded from roads and politics alike. With little work, it could become a sanctuary, a hunting lodge or a refuge for those wary to Skyrim's endless conflict. Perhaps even the hunter herself could become a companion or a teacher, passing on her quiet wisdom about the land, the animals, and the survival herself. Her story doesn't need tragedy, it deserves continuation. But for now, she remains what she has always been, a ghost of the living world, content to be forgotten. In a land obsessed with glory, she embodies the rarest kind of power, the strength to live unseen, the courage to be alone, and the grace to endure without recognition. Despite her strength, it's impossible not to feel that the world has forgotten her. No one comes to visit, no one mentions her in passing. She will never be remembered in songs or books. When the dragon passes by, she might exchange a few brief words, but then the player moves on, and she remains, her life unchanging. And perhaps that is her tragedy. She lives in one of the most beautiful and secluded spots in Skyrim, but beauty without companionship becomes a kind of curse. The cliffs, the trees, and the sky are her only witnesses. If she ever once lived in a city or had a family, that part of her life has been buried beneath years of solitude. Now there is only the hunt, only the silence, only the wind through the pines. Cliffside Retreat stands unchanged, its lone chimney still smoking against the cold. The hunter moves through her days like a shadow, each one blending into the next. She will never be written into the history books, nor sung of by bards. Yet in her quiet endurance, she represents something far greater than any legend. The soul of Skyrim itself, harsh, silent, beautiful, and unyielding. The most deserted NPC and place in all of Skyrim are not tragic because they are forgotten. They are powerful because they continue, even when no one is watching. To understand Septimus, one must first grasp the symbolism of his location. His ice cave is perched far north of Winterhold, closer to the endless sea of ghosts than to any human settlement. There are no roads, no signs of trade, not even an abandoned village nearby. He exists literally outside the map of civilization. Other reclusive NPCs at least linger near society. Nafi the beggar in Iverstead is shunned yet surrounded by villagers. Miko's deceased master in his shack in the woods died alone, but his home sits within walking distance of towns and hunters. Even Anise, the witch in her riverside cabin, still lives near roads where travellers may stumble upon her. Septimus is unique. He has placed himself on a patch of ice so far north that the world forgets him. This physical exile is not accidental. It represents how thoroughly he has been abandoned. While most NPCs remind the player of Skyrim's network of relationships, Septimus's location makes it clear. He has no ties, no allies, no family, and no future. When the Dragonborn finally meets him, his state of mind leaves no doubt that his abandonment is not only social, but psychological as well. His dialogue is fractured, full of contradictions, as if he speaks to himself more than to others. He references thoughts and concepts half-formed, as though the burden of forbidden knowledge has broken his ability to communicate. This mental collapse is what separates him from other figures. The Greybeards live in chosen silence, but remain sane and deliberate. Hermits across Skyrim often speak with clarity, grounded in either religious devotion or survivalist logic. Septimus, by contrast, is neither. His words reveal a man fractured by obsession, enslaved to knowledge he cannot control. Scholars thrive on discourse, on debate, on teaching. But Septimus has none of this. No one listens, no one even comes to see him. No one answers, and eventually his thoughts consume themselves. The result is a man abandoned not only by his peers, but by his own capacity to function in the world. As though mortal abandonment was not enough, Septimus's greatest tragedy is his manipulation by Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of forbidden knowledge. Septimus believes himself chosen. He imagines that his discoveries are his own, that he has been singled out for a destiny greater than any mortal could achieve. In reality, Mora is merely stringing him along, using him as a temporary vessel for collecting information. His obsession with the Dwemer lockbox is not his triumph, but his trap. When the Dragonborn steps into the role of Mora's new agent, Septimus's fate is sealed. Mora abandons him in an instant, no longer needing his service. For a man who believed knowledge was his divine calling, the realization, or perhaps lack of realization, that he was merely a pawn is devastating. He dies not with glory, but with indifference, disintegrating into dust in the cave that has already become his tomb. This abandonment is cosmic. It is not simply that his colleagues left him, or his mind betrayed him. Even the god he worshipped cast him aside. And few characters in Skyrim face betrayal on this scale. Septimus's link to the college is never explicitly detailed, but his knowledge of the Elder Scrolls and Dwemer studies make it almost certain he once belonged there. His skills would have been invaluable in a place dedicated to magical learning, and yet the college never mentions him. No student remembers his teachings. No master acknowledges his disappearance. His name is absent from all conversation within Winterhold's ruined halls. This silence is telling that Septimus is not remembered as a tragic figure, not even whispered as a cautionary tale. He has been erased by omission. For a scholar whose greatest ambition would have been recognition of his work, this neglect is the cruelest form of abandonment. He was not cast out in scandal or remembered as a warning. He was simply just forgotten, as though he never existed at all. The ice cave itself mirrors his existence. It is crude, battered, and devoid of comfort. A single fire burns, books and scrolls lie scattered, and the great Dwemer lockbox looms in the corner like a coffin waiting to be opened. Unlike inns or farmhouses, it is not a place of life. Unlike hunter cabins or mage retreats, it is not a place of work or survival. It is a prison, both literal and symbolic. Septimus cannot leave because his obsession binds him to the lockbox. He is its caretaker, its watchman, and its victim. When he finally dies, the cave does not change. It remains frozen on the ice, an abandoned place reflecting its abandoned master. To stumble upon it after his death is unsettling. The fire still burns, but the man is gone, erased as thoroughly as if he had never lived there at all. And the cave becomes a ghostly reminder of the most abandoned man in Skyrim. The Dragonborn's interaction with Septimus is brief compared to the scale of Skyrim's adventures. They arrive, they listen, they aid him in his tasks, yet their presence only highlights his loneliness. For a short time, Septimus has contact with another person, perhaps the first in years, but even this is hollow. The Dragonborn is not his friend nor his saviour. They are his tool, just as he is Hermaeus Mora's tool. When his usefulness ends, the Dragonborn cannot save him. They can only watch as he disintegrates, leaving nothing behind. The player's role as witness underscores the tragedy. Septimus's abandonment is so complete that even the protagonist of Skyrim, the most powerful figure in Tamriel, cannot alter his fate. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of Septimus's loneliness lies in what it could have been. His knowledge of the Elder Scrolls and Dwemer technology places him in the most brilliant minds of his age. He could have been a leading figure at the college, guiding generations of students. He could have contributed to Skyrim's understanding of magic and history. He could have written books, shaped debates, or even served rulers with his insight. Instead, his genius curled into obsession. His isolation prevented collaboration. His fixation closed him off from dialogue. And his devotion to a Daedric prince consumed his sanity. All his potential ended in ashes on the floor of his cave. Abandoned by others, abandoned by himself, and abandoned by the god he trusted, Septimus is the embodiment of wasted brilliance. In the end, Septimus Signus is the most abandoned NPC in Skyrim, because he is abandoned in every possible sense. His cave is abandoned on the ice, his mind abandoned by reason, his body abandoned by the Daedra, his memory abandoned by the college. He leaves no descendants, no allies, no students, and no legacy. He leaves only a cave that few will ever find and fewer will ever care about. His tragedy is not one of violent death or battlefield glory. It is the slow suffocation of neglect, obsession, and cosmic indifference. And that is why Septimus Signus, mad scholar of the Elder Scrolls, deserves the title as the most abandoned NPC in all of Skyrim. Skyrim is a world built on movement. People travel, stories unfold, and almost everywhere you go, there's a sense that something is happening, something continuing, even when you're not there. But these places and these characters, they don't move, they don't change, they don't connect. They just exist quietly, almost unnoticed, tucked away from everything else the world has to offer. And that's what makes them stand out. Because in a game filled with noise, conflict, and constant activity, loneliness isn't something you expect to feel. But when you find it in an empty camp, a forgotten ruin, or a single NPC with no one around them, it lingers far longer than anything else. Not because of what's there, but because of what isn't.